Welcome to the Pompey Politics Podcast.
I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sainsbury.
Well, there we are.
And you're Simon Sainsbury. You forgot to mention your own name.
Did I? No, it came through for me.
Oh, how strange. Okay. But anyway, welcome, good people. And hopefully, if you are one of the politically motivated people of Portsmouth and you've been out pounding the pavements and stuffing letterboxes and knocking doors, hopefully a combination of the inclement weather and the failing light has brought you safely home with a mug of Horlicks, Bovril, or perhaps even something stronger, so that you can settle back and listen to this year's Pompey Politics Podcast Predictions Extravaganza. Are we poised, Simon?
We are poised. I mean, last year, obviously, we could make play of the the elections were May the 4th, so it was May the 4th be with you. This year's prediction show I playfully have called Second Chances because it's the chances for May the 2nd.
This is excellent. And as we know, for those of you that have listened to the show in the past, we are not always 100% right. And as of last year, it was amazing how many of the politically active members of Portsmouth political scene didn't appear that confident before boxes started being opened and votes started being counted. But then by the end of the evening, were telling us what a pair of absolute buffoons we were and how the results were never in doubt. So there will be the opportunity again tomorrow night to come and chat to us at the count, where we will be broadcasting live from. It's a later start. We think we'll be on air sometime after 1, and with the first results coming in probably about 2 a.m. I think is the plan, isn't it, Simon?
Yeah, I think we'll get there shortly before 1, set up hopefully quickly. So maybe go live just after 1 or 1 o'clock. But the way to make sure you get the notification is that we're going live is to subscribe or click subscribe to us on YouTube, or click the interested to the event on Facebook, or indeed follow us on Facebook. So either way, we'll try to make lots of noise, but we'll get live as quickly as we can. Some people reckon it will drag on for ages. Some people reckon it'll be all over and done and dusted really quickly. We've kind of aimed for the middle, and hopefully we'll be sane and we'll be a darn sight quicker setting up and packing our stuff away than we were last year.
Absolutely, and weather not looking great for tomorrow, I don't think. So lots of weather during the night, and I don't think anything that lowers turnout is particularly welcome. I think it's I don't know about you, Simon, but I don't know why I'm not expecting a particularly high turnout tomorrow.
No, I think you're right. I think one of the key things to watch this year will be what the turnout is like, and how depressed that would be. It'll be interesting to see how that works out, and indeed what impact that actually has across the city. Turnout last year for the locals was 29.4%, which is the second lowest it's been since 2014. It was 29% in 2016. And if you exclude the general in 2015, where the general and the locals coincided, which always drives up turnout for the locals because people are already there for their national vote. 2019, 33%. So we'll see how that goes, and see how that plays out. But one thing you will need to remember when you're at your place of voting tomorrow, and I'm just going to put in the top left-hand corner the QR code if you're not sure where you're going to vote, and indeed what photo ID you need to bring. You can scan that QR code. I'll put a clickable link in the chat in a second. Put your postcode in. It will tell you where your polling station is. It will tell you who the candidates are in your ward, and indeed for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections, which are also happening tomorrow. And also has some information there about polling. But yes, tomorrow is the second local election in Portsmouth where you will need photo ID in order to vote. So please do make sure to take yours. Don't forget, if it's a passport or a driving license, it just needs to look like you and have the same name that's on the electoral roll. It doesn't need to be in date. I won't bore you by reeling off a list now. And as I say, I'll put that link in there. But do make sure you got your ID, because in the trial in 2018, nearly half the people that turned up and were turned away for not having the right ID didn't bother to go back and vote. So if your vote's important, and it is, that's why we do things like this, because we want people to participate and take part. Please do make sure you take your ID.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you my first prediction.
Go for it.
Simon. Turnout tomorrow will be less than 27%.
I think that's an easy prediction to make, bearing in mind that last year it was 29.4, and I think I think actually it will be I think it'll be less than, what did you say, less than 27%? I think it'll be less than 25.
Wow. So we will have a look at the democratic process. And before we get into the 14 wards of Portsmouth, that hotly contested edge of the seat, nail biting ride that is the Police and Crime Commissioner. Difficult to call, really, except Donna Jones is going to win.
Interestingly, in our playful little there's an opportunity for people to tell us what they think their predictions are, and I'm putting that up as a QR code at the moment. So if you want to make your predictions, please do. But I have to be really honest, for the Police and Crime Commissioner, the overwhelming majority of our listeners that have expressed a view have said that they reckon that the Lib Dems, no, that the Conservative candidate Donna Jones, the incumbent, will be winning the Police and Crime Commissioner election. Yeah, sorry, there were several Conservatives that fell off their chair then. Sorry.
Yes,
sorry.
I would think even amongst your friends and colleagues within the Liberal Democrat Party, I'm not sure there are too many who would be backing against Donna tomorrow. So we thought this year, rather than just running through it alphabetically from first to last, we'd go on our sort of confidence levels. And so, Simon, I think we agreed that you would offer up in your list of absolutely certain seats.
Yeah.
What have you got in your list, or the first one on your list of I'm absolutely certain that?
Okay, so it's worth reminding listeners that last year we both actually ended up getting 9 wards right and 5 wards wrong, just slightly different wards. So it was a draw last year, whereas in previous years I believe I did kind of edge ahead of you. So we'll see what happens. The first ward that ward that I am most certain on is Paulsgrove.
Top of my list is at number 1, Paulsgrove. Mr. Madgwick, George, home hosed, probably going to be one of the largest majorities. We are all agreed that one is a pip gain.
Yeah, well, a pip hold. So
a pip hold, rather. Sorry, yes.
So yeah, I'm just and just to kind of give a bit of background to Paulsgrove, for those of us that weren't paying attention, which includes us, half the time. We both reckon George Madgwick is gonna take that one. Again, Paulsgrove seems to be a bit of a tale of woe for political parties about how taking your voters for granted ends in only one thing. 2014 saw the ward select a UKIP councillor with 40% of the vote, and they held on to nearly as much. They retained a vote of at 25% as late as 2019, which was the last year they stood. But 2015 saw them in third with 1,417 votes behind the Conservatives, who'd come from only having half the vote of UKIP the year before, to 1,814 votes, and trebling their vote, with Labour doubling their 2015 vote against their 2014 to 1,745. So that's a lot of numbers to throw up. There's a graph on the screen for those interested, and I'll share them in more detail later. But yeah, once a Tory stronghold, abandoned by other parties, the Pips are the only team turning up for the race in Paulsgrove, and the Tory vote has nearly halved each year for the last 2 years. And there's no reason to think that this year will buck that trend. Interesting point. Talking about turnout last this year. George Madgwick won in 2021 with over 49% of the vote, and that year the turnout actually jumped from its usual 26% to 34%. So a good peak in the turnout there.
And it's a marvellous amount of work that Simon has done, but I will promise our listeners that he is not going to go into as much detail on all 14 wards. Otherwise, our votes will already be cast by the time we finish the show tomorrow morning. So, yes, Paulsgrove, George Madgwick, home and hosed. So, number 2 on my list after Paulsgrove, I have got the good people of Charles Dickens, and I have got that as a Labour gain, effectively a Labour win. Is that in your super certain set?
Charles Dickens I had down as, I'm scrolling back to my list. I've got that as confident, so not super confident, but confident. But yeah, I've got that for Labour. Historically, it's got the lowest turnout in the city, only 18% last year, which was a new low even for them. Despite that possibly being affected by the large number of students in the city, but that also conversely might actually help Labour. But it's also a ward with a tale of woe for political parties, because it's something of a curse. Lots of candidates stand there, get elected, then get deselected, or get elected and then get expelled or from their local party. The exception to that, of course, being the 2016 election of Stephen Morgan to the ward, who then in 2017 became the Portsmouth South Labour MP with a 21% swing.
So, yeah, I think, as you say, Stephen Morgan and of course Yinka is still beating the trend there. So, yeah, for me, I'm certain of that one. Not the biggest majority ever for anybody, but I can't see anybody other than Labour. And again, a couple of threads on Portsmouth politics about the lack of engagement from other parties means I'm super confident on that one. So next on your list for your super confidence, Simon, who have you got?
So my next super confident would be Baffins.
Baffins?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Shall I?
I'm just going to go down my list. Yeah, explain away.
You go down your list. I, in all honesty, I can see that Baffins, Darren, the Liberal Democrat candidate, Darren Sanders, the incumbent. The interest in Baffins is what happens here to the PIP vote. The last 2 years, that's held constant and taken second place from the Conservatives. But yeah, to be honest, it's returned a Lib Dem every year for since 2014. I don't think that's going to be a shocker tomorrow.
Yeah, and to be fair, I was a bit more kind of circumspect with my Baffins response. I had that in number 6 on my super certain list. When it was won 3 years ago, there was an 18% winning majority. That increased last year to 21%. And despite Pip holding that solid second place, I am with you. Lib Dem hold. And as I say, number 6 on my confidence list.
Okay, that's great. So what's your...
Let's go to number 3. Number 3 on my certainty list. And last year we got a lot of flack from our chums in Pip, didn't we? About who's back against Pip. So number 3 on my list for confident wins is Hilsey.
Okay, and who are you calling it for?
Oh, Pip, home and host.
Okay.
So Pip gain. If you look at it last year, Simon, you know, and this is where the madness of swings comes in. Back in 21, Dan Weems won it with a 32% majority. So an absolute walk in the park. Last year, Pip won it with a 34% majority. You know, wow, what a swing. And I just can't see, I can't see, again, and it will be a theme throughout this show. I think the Conservative vote has collapsed. I think it's flatlined. The two PIP candidates or the two PIP councillors that are in there, very active. Dan Weems standing down. So, again, I can't see any result other than a PIP gain.
Okay. I agree that it's going to be a pip game, but I'm only giving that one as a confident rather than a super confident. But yeah, for me, the critical thing will be actually how low the Tory vote actually collapses. Will it be pushed into third place below the Labour vote? Yeah, again, it's another ward that was a once Tory stronghold that isn't anymore.
So I'm picking your confidence, not your super confidence. What else is on your super confident list?
So on my super confidence, let me try and mix things up a little bit. So my super confident is Central Southsea.
Oh.
And if I can just give wrong ward, Central Southsea. So recent form has shown that this ward has moved from having 3 Lib Dems to having 2 Labour and 1 Lib Dem, with Susie Horton being the last Lib Dem standing here. I don't see there being any chance that Charlotte Gerarda, the Labour group leader, being re-elected, although Charlotte did win in 2021 by unseating the then deputy leader of the council, Steve Pitt, who of course then went on to stand and win in Milton the following year. Can the Lib Dems return the favour and unseat the Labour group leader? Nah.
Yeah, I've got it number 7 on my list in terms of confidence. Interestingly, that Charlotte won it with a 7% margin back in 21. That winning margin fell to only 3% last year. So I did hesitate, but that one is still on my list of I can't see any other result than that.
Okay, that's great.
So where are we on my list? Number 4 on my list of super confident results. Nelson.
Okay.
And I've got that as a Lib Dem hold, simply because if you look at it, when Leo Madden won it back in 21, 12% margin of victory. Last year, Lib Dems won the seat again with a 25% margin of victory. Now, I know that Labour have been very actively campaigning in the ward. I don't think there'll be a 25% winning margin. I think that will probably come down to single digits, but I'm calling that one a Lib Dem hold.
Okay, I agree. That's on my super certain list for Richard Adair, who was the Lib Dem candidate in Drayton and Farlington last year. Since 2016, the Lib Dems have secured over 40% of the vote in Nelson. Quite something, considering that in 2014 it returned a UKIP councillor. And the Tories only and in 2015 the Tories only won it with 13 votes over UKIP. So
yeah, I think we know that UKIP and the Lib Dems, not much to choose between them, is there?
No, so if I'm honest, looking at that sort of history, I think, damn it, you've found them out.
Yeah.
I'm almost surprised that this wouldn't actually be a more natural place for the likes of Reform to try their hand than the other places that they've tried. But last year, the Lib Dems took 48% of the vote. And an energetic resurgence of the Tory vote in 2021 was a bit of a blip, and that was the energetic candidate Spencer Gardner, who is of course the Conservative candidate in Drayton and Farlington this year. So we'll see what that is. But yeah, I think we've both called that the same way. We're not agreeing on a single. Sorry, we're not disagreeing on a single ward yet so far. This is
to be fair, part of that is because we are picking our certainties at this point, and I think there's I don't think there's many would make a case against us. So I think we're at ward number 7 now. I've got one left in my top 7. What have you? How many have you got left in your super certains?
So in my super certains, I've got, there should be another one. So let me just, I am super confident about St Thomas.
Oh, that's number 5 on my list. We've unless we've gone in 2 different directions, the agreement between these 2 is strong. And what have you got St Thomas as? Conservative gain?
No. 2014, the Lib Dems were being chased closely by the Conservatives, who actually managed to win in 2015. But that victory was something of an exception. 2018 saw the Lib Dem lead face a strong challenge from both the Labour and the Conservatives, with only 140 votes between all 145 votes between all 3 of them. But since 2019, the Lib Dems have taken 40% of the vote, nearly 47% last year. I can see this honestly only going one way. The interest this year for me will be seeing how much of a spanner in the works reform standing in this ward will be. So Mark Zimmer, who took place in our hustings for St Thomas, and where that ends, and how will Elliot Lee for the Greens, who also took part in our St Thomas hustings, how much that will see of a resurgence, because in 2015 they had a heady 12% of the vote share. So I think the battle in that ward is actually for the second, third places rather than actually for the lead.
Yeah, and I think in that situation, the question I think really around the Greens is where will they take? We know where Reform are going to take votes from, but where would the Greens take their votes from? And are they perhaps further to the left than the Labour Party? Some might argue yes. So there could be some disaffected Labour voters that go to Greens. But again, the percentage, the winning margin increased between 21 to 23. It was 22% last year. Can't see any other result than a Lib Dem hold. So,
ruminations, eh?
Well, indeed. So interestingly, we've been through the top 7 for me. So I'm now, in fact, maybe I've covered 6. So number 8 in my list of certainty.
Okay, who you got?
Copner. And I'm starting to get down into less certain. Obviously, Copner from has been a Conservative stronghold. Raymond Dent came in last year, and this is one where I don't think Raymond will mind us sharing that he was probably the least confident of the PIP contingent before the count started. Yes, so I think we had called it Conservative hold, or I definitely called it a Conservative hold last year, and Raymond got across the line for PIP. I have agonised on this one because I think for me, Lewis Gosling is hardworking Conservative candidate and standing again. So there's a question of whether his personal brand will be enough. Whether he can motivate residents to come out for him rather than for PIP. But I think the national position from the Conservative Party is so, I think it's a bit of a toxic brand at the moment. So I can't, much as I'd like to make a case for Lewis, I've got that as a PIP gain.
Okay. Interestingly enough, I have the PIP candidate. Lee Tyndall was the PIP candidate last year in ENC. But again, once a safe Tory ward, with hardly kind of any spirited action from any of the other political groups. So out of nowhere, PIP arrived and firmly parked their tanks on the Conservative lawn in 2022, and went from being 140 votes shy of first place in 2022 to smashing the ward in 2023 and gaining a massive majority. That was the kind of the big political upset of the night of 2023. So yeah, I agree. Did you say you were, that was your confident rather than super confident one?
That was my confident, and I think for those first 7, I could have made a case. I couldn't make a case for any other result. I'm now down into from sort of 8 to 14 with Copner, where I could make a case for it going the other way to the Conservatives. Do I believe it will? No. So, you know, that's where I'm at now in terms of my certainty level. I've argued amongst myself in terms of which way it's going to
Amongst
go.
yourself, you're almost a liberal
Exactly.
man. Good grief.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So we're past our halfway mark. We've run out of our super confidence, and we're now into the depths of our confidence. I've only got 6 wards that I've got as confident. Only 6 at super confident. So where? Actually, have we gone through? I'm looking at mine now. Sorry, 2, 4. I've only got 5 of my super confidence so far.
Oh, you've still got a super confident on your list.
I've skipped one. What have I done?
The man's lost control of his own.
I'm checking my notes again. My apologies, but don't forget, scan that code or click that link if you want to let us know what you think the results are going to be. Some interesting. Oh yes, my other super confident. How did I leave this one out? Sorry, I kind of didn't put mine in a numerical order of level of confidence. I've just put them into that stratification. So that was my fault for misunderstanding the brief. My last super confident is Milton.
Oh, now
we're talking. Cool. That sounds like there's a disagreement there. Come on.
Well, I'm not sure we'll disagree on the result.
Okay.
But I've got that down at number 11. I am not confident in that at all. And I'm guessing you're going to go for a Lib Dem hold.
I am indeed.
Now, I'm going to agree with you, but I am not confident, because if you look at the winning margin in Milton, it was only 8% last year. And when Kimberley won it back in 2021, it was only 6%. And so there is that element of Labour locally, and you know, I've seen a lot of their online media. I don't know what their leaflets are like, because obviously I don't read them. But there is a piece that says to me, Labour has been running almost a general election campaign, you know, and they've been looking to tap in. Yep, and been looking to tap into this. Isn't life dreadful under the Tories? Wouldn't life be great under Labour? And so, you know, some of the things are a little bit naughty for me in terms of, you know, Labour are going to do this with the buses and do this bus reform and that bus reform and public transport reform in Portsmouth. And it would all be great. But that's based on a national result. So for me, you know, if there was a 5% swing from Labour to, you know, from the Lib Dems to Labour in Milton, then Labour would win Milton.
Okay. My notes on Milton: 2014 red and blue teams were jostling for 3rd place behind a strong Lib Dem vote, but a 2nd place UKIP. Since then, the Lib Dems have won the ward with varying majorities. The closest Labour came to taking it was in 2022, with Steve Pitt, as we mentioned earlier on, having lost Central South the year before, won the ward with a majority of 48 votes over Labour's Paula Savage. A number that clearly hit home to their campaigning strategy, because the next year Gerald Vernon Jackson was returned for the Lib Dems with a 320 vote majority over Paula. And yeah, I get what you're saying about that, but I'm still I'm still.
And I'm going to argue against myself, Simon, because my impression over those last 2 years is Labour absolutely threw the kitchen sink at Milton to try and, to potentially, they had unseated Steve, unseating him again, and then potentially turning over the former leader of the of Lib Dem leader of the council, very much feathers and caps. Now they threw an awful lot at it and didn't get over the line twice. I think Kemberley, I know she's very influential in Keep Milton Green. She's a fantastic hard-working councillor. It's a shame she's a Lib Dem, but there are some good people in the Lib Dems, as you know yourself. So I think, whilst I could, as I say, I can argue a case for Labour on that one, I'm not giving it to them. We agree, Lib Dem hold.
Oh, you're changing your.
No, I was always Lib Dem hold.
Oh right. Oh, okay. But
Yeah, I know.
you had it as a not so certain.
No, I had it down in my confidence levels. I had it as my 11th most confident ward.
Oh, okay. So not certain.
Not certain. So I am not certain from 9 onwards. So if I go back to my
Okay.
9th, I'm not certain about St Jude.
St Jude. Let me skip all the way to the end bar 1. So St Jude, you're not certain about St Jude. And how are you calling St Jude?
I am calling St Jude a Labour gain.
Okay.
So they won the seat last time out with a 7% majority.
Mm-hmm.
If I look back to 2021, I think that, Hugh won it with just a 3% margin back then. I think, if I look at Labour's candidate, forgive me, it's no, is it Elliot Lee?
No, Labour's candidate was Josh Allen.
It's Josh Allen. Sorry,
yeah.
my apologies, Josh.
This
No,
year's, and Josh, the incumbent Hugh Mason, and the PIP candidate John Hill joined us in the St Jude hustings. So do pop along and have a listen to that or watch that.
Yeah.
It was a great hustings actually in a year that's been quite difficult to organise a hustings.
Yes. Yeah. No, and I think Hugh gave a great account of himself. I think, if I look at, down in that sort of South Sea region, I think it is, it is where Labour perhaps put a lot more boots on grounds. I think Josh is a very credible candidate. I think he is going to benefit from the "Won't life be better under Labour?" So I have got him just sneaking that one in, but only by a couple of percent.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think. So I'm just getting back to my notes because I've had to click away to get the links for the hustings. So I've also got Josh winning it. 2014 and 15 saw the Tories being chased by the Lib Dems, with the Labours turning up 5th behind the Greens and UKIP. And they did to actually win the ward in 2019, where they beat the Tories and pushed the Lib Dems into 3rd place. They've won the ward 3 out of 4 times since. Recent history, I agree, has shown the growth of the Labour vote in St Jude. And Dr. Hugh Mason keeps coming back for more with a strong personal vote. As you mentioned, he could still win it, but I do think that kind of national swing for Labour will be just enough to stack the odds against him. So I agree.
Well, so we are fully agreed.
We've not disagreed on a single ward yet.
No. And just for the listeners' benefits, we do this, there is no discussion prior to this arrangement in terms of comparing notes and what we think. Both Simon and I do all of our own homework for this independently, and we both come up with our harebrained strategies as to why we think what we think. So if magically we agree on all 14, then that simply will be, coincidence rather than anything else. So I'm down now in the depths of uncertainty. You've still got a couple more certains on your list.
Yeah. So sorry, I was just playing with trying to cite our predictions as well as the thing. So yeah, I've got a couple more certains. Let's go back to those. I'm going to go kind of backwards. Oh yeah. So yeah. So sorry, should I say did I say, what did I say for St Jude? It wasn't that I was confident. It was that I was sorry. I've clashed that wrong. Don't worry. I shall. Where was my next one? It was do. Should we sing? Should we dance? So did we talk, Hilsey? You talked.
No, we don't. We've done Hilsey.
We dealt with Hilsey. The less, I think, Drayton and Farlington and Cosham were kind of ones where I think I'm of an equal level of certainty.
Oh, so I've got Drayton at 10,
Okay.
Cosham at 12 in terms of my. So should we start with Drayton?
Yeah, let's start with DNF. So DNF, it's another ward that the Tories have historically been left to their own devices. Last year was the first year since 2014 where the Tories got less than 50% of the vote, and it's comically usually referred to as the ward in which their votes are weighed rather than counted. And you might think demographically it's actually probably a strong place that the Lib Dems might chance, but they haven't really, other than the mildly spirited attempt last year by this year's Nelson candidate for the Lib Dems, Richard Adair, who doubled their vote share last year. But yeah, recent Conservative campaign posts seem to be a bit lacking. Will the collapse in Tory vote share do for them, and even in the safe ward, mean that Spencer Gardiner, who's a very spirited and active campaigner, can't win it? I'm on the low levels of confident, but I still think that Pip are going to win it.
Now I've changed this. I've changed the cell on my spreadsheet 3 times on this one.
Okay.
Because there is a part of me that says the Conservatives simply can't lose DNF. And if I look back to 2021, the winning margin was 46%. Ryan Brent got 68% of the vote. It was a massacre. And even last year, with all of the disasters that befell the Conservatives, they still had a 28% winning margin. But that was against Labour and the Lib Dems. And Pip really didn't put a lot of effort into Drayton and Farlington. And I take my dog for a free run in the Drayton Doggy Park. And as we drove around there, I asked my good lady wife to have a good look out of the window as we drove around in a safe way. And she said, "Oh, there's an awful lot of posters for Pip." And there's a bit of me that's like, I do feel for Spencer, because, as you say, he's a committed campaigner. He works very hard. But I don't think he has a personal brand. I think if it was Simon Bosher standing this year, I think he'd still win. I think he'd win. I think if it was Hannah, I think she'd win. But I think with no personal brand and with the effort that Pip have put in, I'm afraid it's another one we agree on. I think this one is going to be a Pip game. But if the Conservatives were to hold on to it by a few percentage points, I couldn't claim to be stunned.
So what do you reckon? Confident or not certain then for you?
Oh, not certain at all. I'm now down into flip a coin.
Okay.
So we're agreed on Pip gain, but
yeah, I kind of, to be fair, I kind of mirror the logic. I'm in the same place. So so for our next
We've only got 3 left.
some level of
Yep.
confidence, even though not certain. So shall we take ourselves, well, our home ward, Cosham.
Watch 'em indeed.
Cosham. So yeah, incumbent Matthew Atkins burst onto the Tory scene in 2019 in the by-election in Cosham that year, caused by the previous Conservative councillor stepping down. Where residents were able to cast 2 votes. The major parties all stood 2 candidates that year, with the overall winner actually getting the 4-year seat, and the second place actually getting the remaining 1 year of the term of the councillor that had stepped down. Matt actually nearly pitched the 4-year post out of Lee Mason's, grabbed it from Lee Mason's hands with a difference of only 11 votes. It's fair to say, though, that it's become kind of obvious that in the council chamber that it seems to be a particular brand of conservatism, and some there's probably stuff to kind of speak to about kind of the factioning within the group. That seems kind of odds of the actual Conservative council group. If I'm honest, I was a bit surprised that he still turned out to be the candidate, but here he is. The Tory ward was once again a Tory triple, with very little activities from other parties until that safety was dented by Labour's Ashgar Shah in 2022, and then last year Mary Vallely joined him as to take the second Labour seat in the ward. And given the profile of Labour's candidate, Amanda Martin, this year, who's also the Portsmouth North PPC, I don't know about your experience, because we both live in the ward. I've not seen a lot of energy and a lot of activity from their campaign. It's not had the determination and sheer presence that I've seen kind of in the last couple of years. So I think Labour could win the ward, but I think the battles between whether Labour win it or whether PIP actually win it, for me, I think the Tory vote again is going to absolutely collapse. And to be honest, I don't think that's a shock to anybody. So I'm not certain, but I think that PIP are going to win it.
So do we both agree? Do we both agree that the Conservatives will lose it?
Yes.
And it is with the last 2 wards that we've got. Again. So I am fairly certain that the Conservatives will lose it. Now the question is that where do those votes go? Do they just stay home and not bother, or do they turn out to vote for PIP? And that's what I've been arguing in my own mind. And I think this is the first one we disagree on. So we agree that the Conservatives will lose it. I think it will be a Labour gain. And the reason why I think that is that it's kind of always baffled me from a PIP perspective that, when George started to get momentum going, and there was a lot of stuff in Paulsgrove and Hilsey, it always felt to me like the natural next step would have been to move into Cosham, because the Cosham ward stretches up towards Wimmering, and I always felt that this would be a more natural hunting ground for PIP. But if you look at their, and if you've got the graphic there, they haven't really given Cosham much attention in the last 2 or 3 elections. And I am at that point where I think they will come second. I think their ability to go from that standing start against the Conservatives in Drayton and Farlington, I can see that happening. To go from a standing start against Labour, when Labour have won the seat the last twice it's been elected, I think it will be mighty close, but I've got it down as a Labour gain.
Okay, so is that a confident or a not certain for you?
Oh, I'm absolutely not certain at all on that one.
There's a theme here. Some stuff we're really certain on, and some stuff it could be a toss of a coin. Okay, so that leaves us with 2 wards left, which is Eastney and Craneswater and Fratton. Which one do you want to do first?
So just having a quick look. So Fratton for me is the kind of most is the second to last. Eastney and Craneswater is the one I'm just flipping coins on. So shall we go to Fratton?
Okay, that's fine. Sorry, let's go to Fratton. Yeah. So Fratton, so normally a scrap between Lib Dem and Labour.
Yep.
The Labour one to the Lib Dem 2 seats in the ward is, of course, the current Lord Mayor, Tom Coles. So normally a scrap between them. Will Student Brown, the Lib Dem incumbent, be returned this year? There's been lots of activity from the PIP candidate, Jacob Shaw. He's been particularly active. For me, this is a really, really hard one to call, because I can also see the activity from Labour, and of course with the impact from the national kind of growing of their vote. I think it could go either of the 3 ways, but I think with a very low, basically with not really any certainty whatsoever. In fact, to the point that I'd say I haven't really got a bloody clue. I reckon Pip could win it.
Oh, you've gone Pip gain.
Yeah.
So in a strange but mirroring way, I've got this down as a Labour gain.
And how confident, not certain, or not a clue?
Oh, it's 13th on my list. I'm
So
slaying chickens and examining their entrails by this stage.
are we in a not a clue territory then?
We certainly are. So I guess my logic is, it's a very difficult one for me, because I have so much respect for Jacob Shaw and for the energy that he puts in, for the work that he does. And I think if Fratton was closer to the north of the city, I think, it is difficult, because we are, politics is a numbers game, and it's about the amount of people you've got who are prepared to go and knock doors and insert leaflets and campaign on your behalf. And I think Jacob is a little bit off the beaten track for Pip's stronghold. And I think this is one where I think, again, I don't know Stuart Brown particularly well at all, really, but he's one of the less obvious, vocal, notable Lib Dem councillors. So I'm not sure about the strength of his personal brand. I think it is far enough south that the isn't life going to be better under Stephen Morgan and Labour effect is going to have a piece. And I think it will be incredibly tight, but I've got Labour nicking it.
Okay. Interesting. So 2 wards we disagree on. I've gone for Pip for both of them, and you've gone for Labour for both of them.
Certainly have. So in both cases, we are calling an upset for the incumbent, more notable parties, and yes. So that leaves us finally down to the bottom left-hand corner as we're looking down the island to Eastney and Craneswater.
Hang on, looking down from what? From Portsdown Hill?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay. I picture it on a map, and I was like, no, it's the bottom right-hand corner. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We're both looking from different perspectives, which is, I guess, the point of the show.
Well, I was looking from your flat.
Okay.
Be able to look out your window and look to what you'd have to stick your head out, obviously. But yeah, if you were to look down the island towards Eastern Craneswater with a telescope.
There's a motorway in the way, and like a really, like my flat's only on the first floor, mate.
Yeah, true.
So anyway, I get your point. So Eastney and Craneswater. So my blurb about E&C. Of late, it's been a Lib Dem Tory race. Lib Dem vote consistent over the last 2 years as they fought to re-elect Matthew Winnington in 2022, and then Peter Candlish in 2023 after Matthew was unseated in 2021. by John Smith, who's the incumbent, who is standing down. It's fair to say social media or cartography wasn't John Smith's strong point, but his chamber contributions have always been made sparingly, but are always considered and valuable interventions, particularly on planning issues. So in some ways, it's a bit of a shame to kind of lose that sort of voice from the chamber. The new candidate obviously doesn't have that, with the expected reduction in Tory votes across the board. The only thing that could be helping the Tory vote in this ward this year is that Mark Zimmer for Reform, instead of standing in this ward like he did in 2023, is standing in St Thomas. So could Pip break through here? But they did well in 2022 when Lee Tyndall, again the candidate in Copner this year for Pip, but don't seem to have made E&C this year much of a priority, and the Labour vote share seems to have reached a bit of a ceiling over the last few years, going from under 10% in 2014 to mid to late 20s, up until as high as 29.8% in 2023, but still not enough to kind of take them, massively close to the Lib Dems. So I think I haven't really got a clue, but if past performance is any gauge, just from a coin toss, I think that's a Lib Dem gain.
Interesting. So this is one where it's almost for me has been a process of elimination.
Okay.
Do I think the Conservatives, do I think they'll see a resurrection in E&C? No. So I've ruled the Conservatives out. Do I see Pip making headway in this ward? No. I think, the fact that Lee Tyndall's moved to Copner, which is a more fertile ground for them than Eastney, I think if they believed that they had a chance in winning Eastney, I think they would have kept Lee there for recognition purposes. So I don't think this is a ward that Pip believe they can win. So that then leaves me with the Lib Dems and Labour. And I'm in a position where if I look at it last time out, the Lib Dems won the ward with a 7% margin. In the south of the city, with the exception of Milton, because I don't think Labour have put the effort in, I think there is going to be a swing from Liberals to Labour. And so I have got, and I think this will be a knife edge. I think again, I think it will be less than 100 votes either way. I'm not enjoying this, have got it down as a Labour gain. So the third one that we disagree on, I've got 3 Labour gains, you've got 2 Pip gains and a Lib Dem gain.
Okay, well, we're seeing some interesting comments pointing out that there's impact in Milton about all of the stuff about Bransbury Park, and that Jack Smith is the Pip, the Pip candidate in the ward is in East and Craneswater is to quote George Madrick is a dark horse of a candidate. So and I think look, at the end of the day, Jack Smith, former Conservative candidate, I think in Milton, if my memory serves me right. So again, there is that element of again, if they're going to pick up, if Pip traditionally pick up votes from the Tories, that's their fertile hunting ground. There once upon a time were lots of Tory votes in Eastney and Craneswater, so I think there's a case for that. And naturally there's never going to be agreement, and because of the complete collapse of the Conservative vote, which is what we're all predicting, the thing that I think none of us are sure on, even though we're certain that there are not going to be as many votes cast for the Conservatives, is whether the Conservatives are simply going to stay home or whether they will cast their votes elsewhere. And as a former Conservative member myself, I look at it
you know, again, as somebody who's very engaged with the democratic process, if I was, you know, if I wasn't in Cosham, you know, if I was in one of those other wards, I've got to look at who do I think will, you know, which is the party that's going to represent my vote, and I will find it very hard. I'd find it very hard to put an X in the box tomorrow, and I think that you know, and that's just my personal perspective. But if that's replicated across the city, and the Conservatives simply don't turn out, then I think that favours Pip in the north and Labour in the south. I think if the Conservatives do turn out, I think that you know, and choose somewhere else. I don't think that hurts Pip, because I think that's where they'd naturally go next. But I think in the south of the city, I think, you know, if people haven't got on board with the Pip message, I actually think that favours that could help the Lib Dems out a little bit, as we've discussed before, Simon. You know, most, I would say, most Conservatives would struggle to put an X in the box next to a Labour candidate, but would perhaps find it less disagreeable to put an X next to a Lib Dem candidate.
Perhaps, but that logic normally applies. But I must admit, looking at national polling figures, which, you know, can or cannot be much of a useful indication at what happens at kind of constituency level, I'm not seeing that translate into a Lib Dem resurgence of vote on a
No.
national scale. They're still tottering around single digits. So it's an interesting one. Just as a kind of quick comment. So the existing kind of state of the council is sorry, I'm just trying to change the graphic that I've got. It has the Lib Dems on 18 councillors, the Conservatives on 8. Labour I've counted as 8, although weirdly on the Labour's on the council website they've got Councillor Judith Smythe as part of as listed as an independent, but also as part of the Labour group. So I think that's probably just a clerical error. I thought that issue had actually been resolved. Pip are currently on 6, and currently we've got Portsmouth Community Independents on 2, which is councillors Kirsty Meller, who's stepping down, and Charles Dickens, and Cal Corkery, who was re-elected on that platform in Charles Dickens last year. So that's the current state: 18, 2 lots of 8s, 6, and 2. With our predictions, if I can get those. So interestingly enough, your predictions have the Lib Dems on 18, the Conservatives on 8, Labour on 8. That can't be right. Something's gone wrong with my spreadsheet, because
something's gone horribly wrong with your
something's
spreadsheet.
Gone horribly wrong with my spreadsheet, because
So I think we'll
ignore that one.
Yeah. So I think what we're both agreeing on is that it is going. If we thought as a Conservative, we thought last time out was dreadful for the Conservatives, this time out is not going to be better.
No, I mean, it was a very difficult, painful, and shocking night, in particular for Scott Pater Harris. But I think that's going to be a universal feeling on the night for all of the Conservatives.
So I think we've both agreed in terms of the Conservatives are going to lose all 6 of their seats. Now, in terms of, you know, where those seats go, Pip are the main beneficiaries. I think you're more positive than I am in terms of. So I think you've got Pip winning 6 seats.
So sorry, in the background, my chart wasn't working, but my table is working in the background. So yes, going from the existing 18 Lib Dems, 8 Conservative, 8 Labour, 2 PCI, 6 Pip. I've got it on 17 Lib Dems. You've got it on 16. We've both end up with 3 Conservatives left. You've got Labour on 13. I've got them on 10. That brings Portsmouth Community Independence down to 1, which is Cal. You've got PIP ending up on 9. I've got them ending up on 11.
Now, the fascinating thing with that
But some of those, don't forget, they're all quite uncertain as to
oh, definitely. But it's interesting where we have uncertainty is around the Lib Dems, is around those seats at the bottom where I've gone Labour, you've gone PIP, and then there's one where I've gone Labour, you've gone Lib Dem. But the interesting piece is, I think, whichever way we go with it, we could see very easily a new, if Labour do as well as I think they will, then Labour, PIP and Cal Corkery could get across the line as a coalition.
Do you think that's likely?
I'm not saying it's likely, because there is an element of shall we say that when Labour and there was the chair seat gate 2 years ago and a year ago where Labour and the Conservatives did a bit divvying them up amongst themselves, and there was a bit of tit of tat for tat last year with the Lib Dems and PIP working together. But I think there is that element of, if we are both approximately right and the Lib Dems are on 17 or 18 and Labour are up to double digits, is there a possibility for a change of administration? I think I can't rule it out, because at the end of the day, both PIP and Labour, Labour particularly, and I've called them on it before, is that historically they've run this sort of phony war from February to May each year, saying the Lib Dems are awful, the city deserves better, the city should vote for change, vote for Labour. And then the day after the election, because there's no way they're going to vote the Conservatives back in, they vote for the Lib Dems. So if both PIP and Labour get the sort of night we think they will, then two parties that work together, that could work together, because PIP are non-politically aligned, could they, in all honesty, just roll over and vote the Lib Dems back in as a minority administration? Of course they could. Whether they will or not, it's a question, I think, to be asked.
I can't see them. Yeah. Well, we shall see. Just before we wrap, I just did want to cover something quickly about the hustings, because I know we'd had some questions about participation. Just to kind of clarify, we reached out, as we do every year, to all of the political parties and as many of the candidates as we can identify and find contact details for on Facebook, or if we've already got them on email or on LinkedIn or kind of some other way. Baffins, we never managed to actually agree on a date, despite us having a willingness to take part from both the Lib Dem and the Conservative candidates. We had a thanks but no thanks from the PIP candidate. Central Southsea, we had a willingness to take part from both Charlotte Gerarda, the Labour candidate, and from the Lib Dem candidate, Felix Zatoshalishi, but unfortunately we couldn't get a date that would work. Charles Dickens, we didn't hear anything from any of the candidates. Copner, we had a willingness to take part from Andy Butterworth, the Labour candidate. A thanks but no thanks from the PIP candidate Lee Tyndall, but didn't hear anything from any of the others. Cosham, we had we had an expression of interest from Amanda Martin from Labour and from the Liberal Democrats, but we just couldn't get any details of a date that worked. And Julie, in the end, I think said that she wasn't going to be able to take part anyway. DNF, we didn't hear from anybody. Eastleigh and Craneswater, we didn't hear from anybody. Fratton, we had a willingness to take part from Steph Richards from Labour, and a thanks but no thanks from Jacob, but didn't hear anything from any of the others. Hilsey, we didn't hear anything from anybody. Milton, we had a thanks but no thanks from Arif Chowdhury for Labour and from the Conservative candidate who was going to be having an operation. So we wish him well and hope he recovers soon. And an interest from Kimberley, but we weren't able to secure any dates and there wasn't anybody else, to be honest, interested in taking part. Nelson, we had a willingness to take part from Duncan Robertson from the Greens, and a thanks but no thanks from Gary Files for Pip, but didn't hear anything from any of the others. I think there was some confusion about how they work from one of the other candidates there, but we didn't hear any offer to take part or even a request to take part. Paulsgrove, as we had the Paulsgrove hustings, but pressed ahead despite, sadly, the only two candidates we had that were taking part were George Madrick from PIP and Ian McCulloch from the Greens. But at the in the mid-afternoon of that day, unfortunately, Ian had to pull out because he wasn't well. So we because it was short notice, we pressed ahead with George. In St Jude, as we've mentioned before, the link is in the comments. We went ahead with Hugh Mason, Josh Allen, and John Hill from the Lib Dems, from Labour, and from PIP, respectively. Didn't hear anything from any of the other candidates. And in St Thomas, we pressed ahead with the hustings with Elliot Lee and Mark Zimmer from Green and Reform, respectively. Although we did get a response from Ian Holder, the Lib Dem candidate and incumbent. Unfortunately, by the time we'd fixed the date with the other, be a date that Ian couldn't attend because of work commitments. But we didn't hear anything from any other candidates. So it was a really difficult year trying to get interaction from candidates, which is a bit of a shame because we know we like doing the hustings and like giving all of the candidates a chance to put their views across to the residents and their potential voters. But sadly, not much action this year, despite last year we had 7 wards and nearly actually got an 8th in, but just couldn't get a date at the last minute. So every year's kind of different. So but thank you. We both want to thank all of the candidates that expressed a willingness to take part, and those that played with their schedules to try and to make things work. Sometimes that wasn't possible. It's a bit of a juggling game, but thank you for your interaction, and even thank you for those that actually just come back to us with an answer of basically thanks but no thanks, because at least that lets us know not to keep bothering them. So that's the thing. But we shall see what's happened.
So a fascinating night tomorrow, and it's that element of it. Oh, sorry. It's I'm currently in my Bond villain motif with Enid Blyton, one of our cats, who has come to join the prediction show. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting night tomorrow for me to win the predictions battle. I've got to see 3 Labour gains, which I forecast, and obviously for yourself, you're looking for 2 Pips and a Lib Dem gain. So we shall see how it all plays out. Again, thanks to people who have sent in their predictions. If any of the great and the good of the Portsmouth politics world want to send in their predictions now or before that first box is open, so that we can have them with us on standby next time, so that then perhaps isn't the crowing of "it was never in doubt" once the results are known. That would be fabulous. But if you are going to be there tomorrow, come and say hello. We're always happy to. The whole purpose of the podcast is to a range of voices, not just mine and Simon's infinite wisdom. So come along and have a chat. Tune in, and we will be with you through the night tomorrow at the hustings.
Yes,
hustings. No, at the count.
Hustings, yes. We're not going to have any more hustings, although
no,
the game's all over. The game's all over. So so we'll see you at the count, going live sometime around 1, but we'll try to keep you posted about how quickly we can set up and get ourselves in there. Hopefully there won't be any shocks of them suddenly actually counting them much quicker than they predicted, because that would be interesting. But yeah, so do make sure to click the link to make sure you get your notifications about tomorrow's tomorrow. It's not tomorrow, is it? It's Friday morning. So our only the second time we'll have done a on location podcast, but we shall see. So if you do want to go, either like, follow, subscribe to us on Facebook or on YouTube, just to make sure that that you get your notification. I'm just popping the links in there. And if you've taken part in our little survey, then the QR code for that is still up in the top left hand corner. By all means, have a go at that, and let us know what you think is going to happen. We'll keep that open, I think, until the ballots close tomorrow, and then kind of go from there. But that was us. We should probably go and get some sleep.
I think so. You've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And I've been Simon Sansbury. Do join us on Friday morning. Friday morning, it sounds horrible, but yes. And good luck, and good luck to all the candidates. And please do make sure you get out to vote, and don't forget that voter ID.
Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube.